Okay, so Mike, thank you for joining us by Zoom. Glad you're here. So we really do thank you for coming, Mac. And I wish we'd had more of our members actually here, because they will have questions that they're not gonna, get their questions in, but we will just do the best we
can. Okay.
And Mac, I've known Mac for a number of years, doing a lot of different wonderful things. He's a member of St. Paul's and a very faithful member, and you've been working on so many really good issues that I've just appreciated you a lot over the years.
Thank you, Gladys. Yeah.
Remind us of the group.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition. That's who I'm representing today. I've got a few cards I'll have to read off to make sure I get the URLs and orgs and all that straight. And we got started in 2019 when this issue came before the Quorum Court, the issue of a jail expansion. And at that point, it was 100 beds or trailers and $20 million. And it seems to have just grown and grown since then in terms of what the sheriff has asked for. We have 710 beds now. We have had as many as 850 people in there, and when it's that crowded, it's dangerous for the detainees, and it's dangerous for the deputies. And with the virus, it's dangerous for everybody. And the answer to that has been proposed by the sheriff is to add more jail beds. Going to speak not only to that today, but also to the issue that's on the county ballot in Benton County, and also now in Madison County. So we've really doubled down on what we're going to do. And just by way of background, we have had a study commissioned by the Quorum Court by a group called the National Center for States Courts, who looks at judicial systems and what their problems are. And they've given us many recommendations, very few of which we followed, to try and find a less expensive, more humane way out of the situation.
Do you want to tell us how much that study cost?
That study cost $60,000, which was a lot of money, right. but really, really well worth it if we follow some of the recommendations.
That was the point I was trying to make, went down the
Yeah.
drain.
So far, really, the only thing that's been done is we've, in Washington County, created a criminal justice coordinating committee to try and bring the officers of the courts and law enforcement together with citizens to see what else we can do, and we'll get to that. There are many alternatives that we've not employed that have been proven successful in other jurisdictions. Let me see if I can start this, Gladys.
See the share button there?
No, not yet. Okay.
Share screen.
Share screen. I'm looking. Yes, it's all lit up in green. Okay. Click. Okay. Now, where do we put that?
It's on desktop, but if you hit that show all right there in the center.
I'm going to let you do that. So I'll hit the wrong. Okay. Oh, thank you. Show all windows.
And it tends to put the new thing at the bottom, so we probably have to scroll down to the bottom.
All right.
Unless you see it here somewhere.
I think it's thinking. There we go.
All right.
Okay. So I have a short slide deck to sort of keep me on track. As I mentioned, this has come up before. We thought we'd beaten it in 2019. Patrick Deakins, who's one of the people running for judge, voted against this, and it was sort of a coalition between people who didn't want more jail beds for humanitarian reasons and people who didn't want to incur the liability of the tax. Somehow they've changed their minds. Some of those same JPs that voted against it now are for it in a very big way. And on our ballot in Washington County, we'll go through the language here in a second, is a $140 million bond issue with an 1/8 of a cent sales tax. Benton County is looking at even more. In total, it's almost $500 million of obligation. And the evidence shows that that money does not necessarily make us safer. Putting more people in jail also puts more families at risk. It means people may have a much harder time finding jobs in the future. That's not to say we don't want to hold people accountable who are criminals, but our methods of incarceration are very aggressive. At any given time, half of the people inside of our county jail are detained because they couldn't make bail. A judge has said that they are not deemed to be a threat to themselves or to society, but they couldn't come up with the $500 or $1,000 to get their freedom. Sarah Moore, who's been involved with this for a long time, 2019 is when I ran onto her. She's found that in our Arkansas Constitution, it says that bail is the last option, that we should find other ways of having people provide restitution to society, and that money bail should be the last thing. I mean, you think about Arkansas, we're a poor state, and it essentially it's bad news when you're not rich and we're as a society and we criminalize poverty. So of course we need more jail beds if that's how we're going to continue. One last point from this slide: other investments can be made that will improve our well-being and our safety. We don't get a choice on our ballot. Sarah Moore and Beth Koger made a trip up to Lawrence, Kansas, which is really a similar community university. Kansas is there. They did their initiative, their ballot initiative, gave them choices so that they could rank whether they wanted to build a jail or create a mental health and sobering center. And they took the less expensive and more humane option. It's been very successful. Our Quorum Court did not give that to us.
So the Quorum Court was the one who decided the terms of the ballot initiative?
Absolutely. They put together the language is by ordinance that came through the Quorum Court. I didn't know what the Quorum Court was until I got involved with this, and I didn't understand it. There are legislators. I thought they just married people, you know, but they are our Senate and Congress and House of Representatives folded into one. So they have the power to levy taxes and sales tax. They have to come to us and ask for our approval.
Is there any public power to change those terms?
We can vote them out of office.
Vote them out, that's it.
That's it. That's it. The public power lies in trying to achieve transparency. That's something that Beth Koger's really worked hard on, because there were no meetings leading up to this. But the bond house, the rails that all this has to go on financially, they've all been set up, and with no public notice and no transparency. So
the 140 million bond issue is going to be funded by a sales tax on all the citizens in Washington County.
yes.
And what is the amount of sales tax?
Sales tax is 1/4 cent for construction. Those bonds will be retired. Let me get to the next slide. I think it's right there.
Well, maybe it's coming. So
Yeah, well, but let's do it. Yeah. And it's $113 million for our county detention center in South Fayetteville, and then another $28 million for juvenile detention center. There's lots of twists and turns on how those amounts have grown over the years. I think one of the major things is that the county has not told us how much they expect this to cost to operate.
Right, that's another, and where does that money come?
Well, that even Sheriff Helder said that's to be figured out. That's really a concern, because right now we have 1/4% sales tax for maintenance and operation of the jail. That costs about $13 million a year, but we pay $17 million. The $4 million difference is made up by the cities, Springdale, Fayetteville, Lincoln, Farmington, kicking in a pro rata share of that deficit through a memorandum of understanding that's been agreed to by the county and municipalities. So we have 700 beds now. We're not sure how many they're going to build, because this is essentially a blank check. Says you pay the money and we're going to do with it what we think we need to do. There's no specifics. There's very few. There's no design.
No transparency there either.
No transparency. Here's the thing, and this is really elementary math. It's probably at the very limits of my arithmetic capability. If they build 1,000 beds, and they've talked anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500.
Oh.
Yeah, they've doubled down in a big way. If you ratio out 700 and 1,700, which is what we might wind up with, it's 140% increase. And that 17 million starts to look like it's somewhere between 40 million and 45 million in 2021 dollars. In the 3 or 4 years it takes to build this, it'll probably be, we'll have inflation. And so it is a huge commitment.
Out of control, actually.
It does. There seems to be an element of empire building there. And we have a mindset that we make money at the jail. I've heard that said in many quorum court meetings. You know, we have to bring in more prisoners from the federal holds that are here because of our Western District of Arkansas court. We had Madison County, which we don't have very much of anymore. The reason we had Madison County is our circuit court covers Washington and Madison counties. So it's a huge commitment, and it is unknown. The operation part has not been evaluated at all.
You know, I did do the math at one point, and the money that we get from the feds and from Madison County is not more than the per diem for prisoners. So what baloney?
Precisely.
You know?
Yeah. It costs them somewhere in the neighborhood between $80 to $90 a day.
Yeah.
If you divide out 710 by the 17 million. To bring in more people, the state pays, you know, I think at one point it was $32. It's a little more now. And the federal, they love the feds because they paid $70. Still didn't cover the nut. Yeah. So that's a big issue. We're being asked to write a blank check. Benton County, with their solidly Republican quorum court, they were a little more forthcoming. But by the way, just to cover it, the 1/4% sales tax would sunset at the end of about 20 years, 18 to 20 years is when those bonds, the bonds would be.
In about 20 years.
18, I think, was their projection.
So Mike is asking a question.
Oh.
I think you might have answered it, but he says, why is there no competing ballot that offers alternatives? No competing ballot measure?
I asked the same question myself. One of the arguments that was made, this happened because we have a super majority in our quorum court. I don't want to bash Republicans because some of them are my friends, but as justices, they can do anything in one meeting with 10 votes. Right now they have 11. So hopefully that will change the cycle, because then they have to read the thing 3 times in separate meetings. So people have a chance to raise their hand and say no. or ask for an alternative. It was never offered this time around. Benton County is looking at a 1/4 cent for ongoing maintenance and an 1/8 of a cent for construction, again with about 18 years to pay off. This puts most of our cities over 10% on sales tax. And I'm privileged, this didn't affect me. I didn't realize, I thought that there was no sales tax on groceries. There's no state sales tax on groceries. So the county and municipal taxes are still there. So this will go directly on people's food bill, which is already an issue.
So how much of it will go for food? I mean, if right now, haven't they done away with the state tax on food?
Correct.
But, so some of the tax that we're going to pay every time we go for groceries is going to the city for this shape, or is that?
To the county, yes.
That's what I mean.
Yes, yes. That's where it'll all be there. You know, I think those taxes in Fayetteville are around 3 and a fraction.
We already have one of the highest sales taxes and that includes Los Angeles, San Francisco. It's no joke. We are really overtaxed.
I agree. I looked at we get rated as a place to live. And we dropped from 3 to 7. Yeah. I looked at the sales taxes for the other cities. I'm trying to think of where Boston, San Jose. We were by far the highest. They were like 7, and we're double digits, or we certainly will be after this.
Well, that's what I want to ask. The breakdown on the sales tax, where can we get that? Because see, I've never seen a breakdown on it.
You can look at your receipt from Harps. It shows that 3. I think it's 3 1/4
For the county.
for all municipal and county, all which you call local. Okay, everything but the state, and I think the state is 7.
It's built into the price, not as an add-on.
No, it shows on the
As an
receipt
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's 7 for the state, and the remainder is county and city.
On local taxes for food but it's more for some other things than food, isn't it? Or is it the same? Do you know?
I don't. I don't know if
We
drugs.
need to look at all of our tickets that we get from whatever we buy.
Well, I do know about feminine products are being taxed. That's a bill that's coming up for this upcoming legislature at the state, which young people have to buy continually.
Yeah.
Has the Quorum Court made any provision for how to deal with the crowding before the deal is finished, which is years away?
It's a great point. We have a crisis that we can't solve for 3 years, right? If your house was on fire, the fire department will be here in 3 years, We saw a lot of response out of the sheriff during their bout with COVID. And they were able to reduce their population from close to 800 to under 500 for several months. And they did it by letting folks go who probably shouldn't have been there in the first place, right? They're innocent until proven guilty. And they did remote monitoring with ankle bracelets extensively. Now,
Crime didn't spike.
well, I was going to get to.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, let's see who's next. No, it was great. I'd much rather talk our way through it. Let's see how I got to do this. I think that a couple other points. One is, if this goes through, we won't. If the judge has 1,000 more beds to fill, they're not going to be lenient in how they deal with people. Some people don't deserve leniency, but many do. And I think this next slide points something out. I think we're sort of covering up stepping on the line there, but
Can you minimize that?
maybe I can move. Let me move it. Let's see what happens.
Or something.
No, don't mute me.
There's a mine,
Just go over to the minus sign.
Oh, right there.
And just click.
I keep hitting the wrong. There we go. All right. All right. So the blue line goes back to the early 70s, thereabouts. This is people incarcerated per 100,000 of population between the ages of 15 and 64. And the blue line is the national trend, and the red line is us.
oh,
And we can see that nationally, the trend is down. Jail's very expensive, right? It's the second most expensive bed in town after the emergency room in the hospital. But we've kept on going. There's, I guess, that dip at the end, a little bit of COVID might be in there. So the rationalization for building the jail, besides overcrowding, is I've heard it from Judge Wood. I've heard it from many council members. Our population's gone up. We must have more criminals. They are directly correlated. So it's kind of like those people coming in for Walmart and JB Hunt just can't be trusted, So it's a result of policy and not population. I think that's the takeaway from that graph. And nationally, we've been able to change policies and affect the number of incarcerated people, and we're doing, in Arkansas, we're good at putting people in jail. We're like the seventh most incarcerated state in the country.
Well, Mac, the obvious question here is what are the demographics of who gets arrested?
Well, it's what you would expect. It's people who can't afford bail is a huge chunk. It's people who need other services and can't get them, who are mentally ill or who don't have a house. I think those demographics are. It's also single women with children. The Vera Institute for Justice, and this was something that the Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition got on. They came in and did a study of our jail population. In 1984, there were 10 women in the Washington County jail. Now there's over 200. Many are mothers. So drugs or a broken taillight. Sarah has a story about one woman who lost her child and it took 2 years for her to get her back because she spent 3 days in the jail. And
So is there a study that shows this demographic breakdown presently, the present demographic?
yes, yes.
That's what we need. That kind of thing is what really would help us understand what's going on.
Right. I don't know that I would dare attempt this with my technical capabilities, but at the Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition website, we have a real-time dashboard for arrests. We don't have the jail, we have arrests. But you can see that 90% of them are for nonviolent offenses. How many people are being held for drugs, for DUI, all that stuff. That's on. Takes a minute to load up.
Is immigration involved in it?
Good question. What was better than I? What was the law, the act for
287G.
287? Yeah. So the sheriff said he would not cooperate with that anymore. About a year and a half ago.
About the same time he was dealing with the COVID time.
Yeah. Oh, right. It was, yeah. But we're not sure that that's still the case.
Well, Stephen Koger, I was just at an immigration gathering that he pulled together, and he said people, even without 287G, are voluntarily putting people, outing people for immigration.
Okay. Yeah. Those people don't stay in the jail very long. They get turned over to the feds. Yeah.
They get turned over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on a weekly basis, if that's what it was when it was official policy. But
So they're not even given the chance to pay bail, they're just turned over to the feds.
correct. Yeah, there's no, I don't think any even a hearing, you know. If it is, it's at a federal level. I'm an engineer. I'm not a I'm not a lawyer. And certainly Stephen knows a lot more than I do. My feeling about it is this. This is not an elegant analogy, but in Arkansas, people kind of latch onto stories. If you have a clogged sink at your house, you don't put in a new septic tank. You call the plumber and you get the pipes flowing again. And our problems with the overcrowding are because our courts are messed up. We can't move people through. Guilty, innocent, they're stuck. The judicial assessment study says that from 2015 to 2019, the time to dispose of a charge, just any charge, guilty, innocent, felony, misdemeanor, it doubled over those 4 years. Certainly our population didn't double. So we've got a problem that's upstream of the jail, and those problems land in the jail. And I can't really blame the sheriff for wanting to have more resources, because we've dumped mental health and drugs and all those things land on his lap. You were going to ask a question.
I wondered if the jail could, if what they do is, if a jail doesn't have enough room, they contact another jail, and they can take the prisoner and charge him, and then that's a way of making money. So they tend to want larger jails so that they can make more money.
Right. They think there's an economy of scale to all of this, right? And it's not. Also, people who are away from home are going to have a harder time having support from their families, or and if they're from another jurisdiction, to be able to fight their case. You know, there's local jail makes sense in a lot of ways, because then you're close to your resources. If you have to be, right now, Madison County sending people to Arkadelphia and Hot Springs. So if they've got a hearing up here, they've got to get back, you know. And even inside of our county, transportation is a tough issue. I drove for the Bail Project for a while because people can't get from Elkins to Lincoln with any consistency.
You mentioned this report. I know that there were alternatives came up and that of what we might do instead. Could we move on to that?
You bet.
Is it time for that?
We're
I'm interested in knowing what the alternatives are.
Let's
And the
get there.
costs.
Yeah. This is crime statistics, arrests for Benton and Washington counties over the last several years. We don't see a COVID spike. If anything, we're getting more of a hit now as people are being evicted. The moratorium has expired. Lots of food insecurity in our area makes for desperate people. We did a little of that math. This is some of that jail math about what it's going to cost to operate these facilities. It's interesting. Benton County is a lot more efficient than we are in how they $17,000 a year per bed for them. Right now we're at 24,000 currently, and as I said, it may go much higher.
That's reminding me that I'm remembering when we had to fight that $30 million they wanted in 2019. The sheriff clearly did not have data to back up anything he was saying, and he and at a quorum court one day, as he was talking. And I can't remember who he was talking to. It was after the quorum court session, so they were standing in the back, and they were complaining about the guy who kept the data, and it got really clear that the guy didn't use a computer to keep their data, and so they didn't, they didn't really have access to stuff. And it seemed to be difficult. This is the thing that I was really shocked at. They were all angry at him. And I think he was very difficult to work with. So getting data was very hard for them.
Yeah.
And it made so little sense to be operating in that vacuum like that.
That's really true of the whole court system too. Something that we advocated, and I bet you were part of this discussion, Gladys, was, if you have a dental appointment, they harass you to no end to get you there.
That's right, yeah.
And I think they have just in the last year or so started to use a calling reminder about court appointments.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most prevalent charges that people are held for is failure to appear. And the judges, only having hammers, thinking all problems are nails, assign bonds of as high as $50,000 for that. I doubt that it ever gets paid.
Yeah, really.
County be rolling in money if it did, But that's a very that lack of what's the word? The lack of having evidence seems to be very, very prevalent in this conversation. Yeah. That's why they go back to population. Oh, our population's going up. We must need a bigger jail.
The only data they need to know.
That's all they need to know.
Something somebody else keeps.
And in Benton County, they've called this an infrastructure project, which is really a twist. Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So does that mean they can use infrastructure funds?
Well, that's been a lot of conversation about the rescue funds. Washington County put all the CARES money in the bank, right? They've only just now started to talk about a procedure for nonprofits to get a very small sliver of that money and the rescue money. No, the Treasury said you can't do that. You can't build incarceration facilities. That's in their final rules. They knew who they were dealing with for a little bit. So this is, a list of, and when we talk about these in a little bit of detail, I've been listening to this presentation, so I know some things. If we do go forward, we won't do any of this. Pre-trial services is the idea of how do we help people who they could come to court, but maybe they've got children at home, and if they can get childcare, they can meet their obligation. The reminders, the idea of that. How do we support people? How do we support those people who are having a tough time and come into contact with the law enforcement and the judicial system? That's what the pretrial services are about. Sobering Center. Sebastian County just decided to develop a sobering center. $600,000 a year to bring to have the facility and to bring people in who can help people who are not sober. And I imagine that applies to drugs too. I'm a lucky guy. I've not had these problems, but the people I see that have them, it's pretty serious.
Yeah. What the point of the sobering center is that because somebody's done a crime, usually a misdemeanor, I assume, just because they're drunk, they can get them sobered up and they go home.
Right, something so they don't get booked into the jail.
But they wouldn't get arrested. I mean, they wouldn't.
Right,
and home and sober up and you're fine.
Right now, often you get booked in, so now you have to have a bond hearing. Right. And you're charged with public intoxication. Okay. Yeah. So now you're in the cycle. Okay. So the sobering center and deputies didn't sign up for that.
The police who are doing the arresting would have to decide whether that person just needs to sober up, or if there's another problem they need to be arrested for.
Right. We have
some training on the part of the police.
Some, yeah, absolutely. But they don't have to deal with them. The only way they can deal with them now is to take them to the detention center. They do have the crisis stabilization unit. It's just opened back up.
And that's largely for mental illness as opposed to just being drunk, right?
I think that's for crisis.
Hard to tell the difference.
I would imagine, but I think that there they can put a 72-hour hold on somebody. So if there's a drug issue, they can be there long enough to get, you know, some help.
How long can they stay there?
72 hours.
That's all? The
That's-
crisis stabilization center,
Yes.
that's all they could stay, and then they refer them to another situation?
Well, they've got the resources there. They can, I think there's nursing resources there, and they would be handed off to Ozark guidance or nobody. They're there on, essentially, they can leave after 72 hours on their own cognizance. The original thinking was this will lower the jail population. I mean, that's what they justified it as. I went to some of their meetings. They had back when it first started, they were not being used at all. So I went to some of the meetings, and the people who were involved. One was the chief of police, Mike Reynolds, from Fayetteville, and he said, "Are you keeping statistics on diversion from jail?" No. So, you know, I hate to agree with my buddy J.P. Johnson, but shit, let's look at the metrics, right? Let's develop the evidence.
Yeah. Well, now it's UAMS
Yeah.
rather than Ozark guidance. So I'm hoping that a university connected, it's a school, a school is going to be a little bit more tuned to the need for metrics.
Yeah. Took them a long time to get back. Yeah.
Now, I want to clarify, this is a list of things that we might do if we don't pass the jail tax, right?
We should do them regardless
I know,
of what
but
happens, but yes.
I'm wanting
The-
to know about this jail tax, because
Yeah.
I think that's the strongest thing in this election that's coming up. We don't want any more taxes. And so, yes, I'm for these kind of things, but you know, where are we gonna get the funding for them? So in a way, we don't. We want to say, don't wanna pass this, and then we will begin to think of what we can do instead. We should already be thinking about that. But right now, as long as all we're thinking about is we're gonna get a jail and take care of our problem, we've gotta get another way of thinking about it. And that is, we're not gonna get any more money for jails. We're going to think of doing other things.
Right.
But, you know, I can see how you'd be asked, well, where are we gonna get the money to do these things?
Well, we need to apply resources. Okay. I mean, this is we used to have asylums.
But we're gonna deal with that after we get rid of this thinking that will tax us some more.
But
Well,
at least we know there is this list of resources that we can say, yes, these are the things they're doing.
Others
So
have done that,
it'll be up to the county to fund these as
and it's
a
gonna be
priority.
cheaper, obviously.
It's gonna be
these things are
cheaper.
Gonna be cheaper.
Yeah.
I agree that we need to be able to say there's some alternatives, but right now, it's not long till November.
you're
We've gotta
right.
convince people that we don't want more sales tax.
You're right.
This is a group of letter writers, by the way.
Okay. So here's the next slide is what can you do?
Oh, here's another question over there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Have
Let's-
any numbers been put on these things of what that cost?
There is some in the report. They're clearly where they've been used in other communities, they're less expensive. But there is not a free ride.
Has anybody prioritized those?
This is the thing. This quorum court does not want to talk about any of these things.
No, but I'm talking about the committee. Has the committee prioritized this?
Well, we've been involved in trying to make some of these things happen. Okay. And some of them are free, like the warrant clinic that we're doing is essentially free.
Right.
Because, you know, people they don't get put in jail because they missed their appointment. Or we did a thing where we changed out headlights and taillights. And we did that in our parking lot with a lot of people were involved with that.
I saw
St.
them
James.
working
Yeah, yeah,
there. There are two boxes and screwdrivers.
yeah, right, right. And we wound up doing breaks, which was a little bit outside of the original scope. Yeah. So we had, we were going to start at 9 o'clock. By 8:30, we had a whole day's worth of work to do. And we did about 35 cars.
Well, Mac, I also want to point out that the Warren Clinic, this is clearly one of those things that, that would help people stay out of jail. But it only really got accepted. They pressured the district court to actually do that. I think it's the district court that's doing it.
No, it's the circuit court.
The circuit court is doing it. But it was the Justice Coalition that actually did all the work to decide how it was going to happen, publicize it, get people there, and make sure it actually happened. And so then the circuit court was very happy to take credit for it.
Yes.
But they did not do the work.
We got them started, and they're doing they're doing a lot of the work
Now
now.
they're doing it. Yeah.
So they see the benefit.
And there's no question.
Well, I do think that the study that got commissioned 2 years ago prioritizes. It is a very thorough study, Maya, of alternatives to incarceration. And embedded within that study is boom, boom, boom.
Good point. It's
So
160
it's been done.
pages.
The Arkansas Justice, they didn't do it, but it's been done. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that the ARPA funds were put into the bank. Could any of those be used for these?
Sure, these would all qualify if they're trying to spend it as fast as they can. Well, one of the things they want to spend it on is a COVID facility down at the jail that would incorporate 200 beds, and they think they can sneak $10 million into that through a loophole.
They also bought office furniture for one of the departments.
Well, didn't they give a lot of salary increase?
Well, and they did. I wouldn't want to work for the county for peanuts. Sarah and I did a podcast for the Arkansas Democrat. I gotta hold my thought together here. ARPA, she had a really good thing to say about ARPA. It'll come back, or not. I think all of these, one, they had the support of the study. Two, Christy Beaumont, who runs the drug court, she's one of the judges. She has spoken really forcefully about this issue, which I thought was pretty good. The Quorum Court is reluctant to support the judges, in my opinion, but very quick to support the sheriff.
Yeah. I think it's a woman-man thing. They're anxious to support a man.
Okay, I
do think that.
It sure looks that way, because Judge Taylor wanted to have a qualified legal assistant, and Justice of the Peace Deacons, who's the primary pusher of this, abstained from the vote to give her $50,000 or whatever. I mean, peanuts in the big picture.
Yeah.
Well, Gladys, my privilege prevented me from seeing that.
We would have been happy to talk to.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
Now, is Beaumont opposed to this tax?
Yes.
I would think so.
The study concluded, and this is pretty much what she said, is why would we try the most expensive alternative first? And it's not going to be here for 3 years, right? So back to your point. The Arkansas Justice Reform Coalition has really been nice. We've been very focused on positive solutions and not making too much of a ruckus. So for the ballot, we have a ballot question committee. We had to file with the state board of ethics and tell them who we were and what our objective is to feed this thing. And we have a website where you can donate money, no tax, no. So that's a little more along your lines.
And now you have up there, vote no on jail tax. That's okay, but really it's vote no on another sales tax.
Well, this is the first shot. We actually have an offer to partner with Progressive, what are they? It's Grover Norquist. It's the
I don't know.
Americans for Prosperity. That's who they
Oh,
are.
Americans for Prosperity.
Yeah, okay, don't,
Really?
yeah, they're against the tax. So they're offering funds for phone banking. They've got phone banking. They're really good at saying no. Yeah. So Sarah's negotiating that,
Okay.
and we're trying to raise our piece of it. We think we need about in total $40,000 to run a decent mail campaign in the 3 counties. So
So in other words, donating to you guys helps to promote that?
yeah, the no tax no is just that's where we might not be so nice, because we've tried to kill them with evidence, and kindness.
Not
Just
interested in
they
evidence.
they don't listen. It's the only thing I'll fault Beth for is, boy, you've given an awful lot away that wasn't appreciated. So
Well, another reason they might not be listening is there's some kind of thing I heard about someone wanting to build the jingle and there being connections.
we expect the contractors who our county government for supposedly being fiscally responsible, there is a lot of money that runs through our incarceration system. If you want to make a phone call, the sheriff gets 50 cents. Our medical services, we get to pay for their health care, right? We need to if they're under our care. But that contract has not been bid since 2015. Karis has had that contract now for 7 years without any competition. The medical provider for the county, because they farm that out. They don't have any staff doctors and nurses, so they hire the Karis, which is right across from St. James Missionary. That's the folks, and they may have gotten in more trouble than is worth with the ivermectin issue. But that is, I think that's a real example. I ran for JP last cycle, and and Beth has done this too. We've signed up for all the notices to bid. In 2020, before the election, I got 6. Yeah, and they were not big ones. They have selected their contractor based on a request for qualifications. You can contract either by saying, I want proposals and I'll take the cheapest one available, or you tell me your qualifications and I'll assemble those and I'll make a decision to get the most qualified person, most qualified firm.
So that doesn't have to go public?
It's a real low-key public way to do it. It's not a bad idea, but I think it's been abused, and we're expecting to hear from the contractors.
So it turns into a buddy system.
Yeah. Who's getting the money? That's where's the money going from? The kickbacks and whatever.
Well, they're not necessarily kickbacks. But I don't know of any bribes. But if you don't bid, you don't know, and I think it's really unfair to all of us.
So it's a transparency issue yet again.
Yes. So letter writing will be important. You get one every 30 days to the Democrat Gazette. So let them hear from you. I think also we're going to be looking. As I mentioned, we're interested in money. We think we're going to have some phone banking going on and some door hangers. We just had a session up in Northwest Arkansas Community College in Bentonville.
Is all this information on your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm glad that. Well, you've got these slides.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I'll send these out after we finish. And then we're recording, so hopefully we'll have the whole discussion that we can share with you too.
And Sarah and I were interviewing the podcast for I didn't know the Democrat Gazette did podcasts, but they've got 2, one with Sheriff Elder and one with us, which will be posted, I think, fairly soon.
Good. That sounds fair and balanced.
I have printed copies in black and white, which I can leave with you because that'll give you sort of something to refresh on.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue, but at least we get the opportunity to vote on it. It's during the general election. It's a special election on the same day, so it's at the bottom of the ballot. There are a lot of issues on the ballot this time around. I'm really curious if 4 passes and marijuana becomes legalized, a large percentage of holds are on paraphernalia.
Oh, my
So
gosh.
I imagine a large percentage of those are marijuana. So you wonder what happens to the jail population.
Yeah.
But
Stephen also says that the drug task force has really done a really bad number on Washington, Madison counties because they really have just been, they go crazy, just dragging in anybody on drug charges.
yeah. And
If it becomes legalized marijuana, is it retroactive to the people being held? Because there's been a lot of situations where it wasn't.
I don't think that's the case. I think that those sentences stay in place.
That's what I
It's a
thought.
separate issue to go out and get them relieved. I know it was in other states. I went to decarcerates. You're familiar with them?
Right.
They're really an abolitionist movement. They had their statewide meeting a couple weeks ago down in Little Rock. That's one of the issues they want to pursue if it passes, is how do we get the people who are in jail for that charge out?
I know Larry Froelich is still working on trying to get some people off out of prison who went in when you could get life sentences for having a really small amount of marijuana in your possession. And there's still about 10 people in our prisons who are in that state who have their sentence was like 98 years for tiny bits, just depending on what the judge happened to think at the moment.
Depending on their color.
And their color, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 20% are Black people in our jail. 5 or 6%. Yeah,
What percent of the population?
I think it's between 5 and 10. So
You know,
for the county.
my boyfriend was driving this old car and there was this paraphernalia on the seat beside him and he gets stopped. Nobody notices. You know, here's this well-spoken white guy. We don't want him.
Let's see, Leslie had her hand up in the chat.
Yeah, and 2 things. One, I think Mike put this in a while ago and I just didn't see it, but he says, where does the money the state and the feds pay for prisoners go? If we know that, no assumptions, please. Does it go to jail operating costs? Does it top the general operating fund of the sheriff's department? So do we have any idea where?
Yeah, it goes straight to frame their operating costs.
Straight
So,
to the
yeah.
cost of the jail.
There is a line on the county budget for the contributions that they get from other jurisdictions, as well as what they get for the email and phone services that the sheriff contracts for. So there is some transparency there, but well, you got to know where to look.
And the only other thing that I had was just a note for Jane, because you were wanting, I think you wanted the breakout of the sales tax stuff. Okay. So this is from, I know this because I have to do sales tax for Daniel for paintings, so I always have to break this out. So for Fayetteville, sales tax is 9.75%. 2% goes to the city. 1.25% goes to the county, and then 6.5 goes to the state. So that's the breakout.
That's helpful to know how it's breaking out because, that affects the way we can understand how much we're really paying.
Right.
So who is in favor of having another tax put on us? Who is it that's supporting this besides the Quorum Court and all their allies, whoever those people are?
I think it's wonderful if we are partnering with Arkansas for the Prosperity Group. I mean, that means it's not them.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, there was a meeting, this is for Benton County. All the mayors were involved. And they all said, yes, of course, we need this.
For Benton County, but
Well, Springdale voted for it. I thought that was pretty interesting because they're in both counties. So do you think they want to have, 3,000 new beds in the area? Pulaski County only has 1,500 jail beds. And you think about how people are. I've spent a lot of time in Little Rock. I've always been a lot more comfortable up here. I guess it's my whiteness.
Matt,
Yeah.
Springdale's prisoners come to Washington County, don't they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there were city jails in Springdale and Fayetteville, and they've both been closed.
To answer Jane's question, are there organizations out there that are specifically publicly in favor of this? I haven't seen any, but there must be.
Well, I think the police are for it. Makes their job easier, in terms of what to do. Tom Cotton said we are under incarcerated.
Oh, he said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He said that about our area.
About the state.
Who said
About
that?
Tom Cotton, our senator.
Oh.
I mean, I heard.
Yeah.
I heard it on the radio.
Well,
Because,
don't believe anything you hear.
well, who I put a lot of faith in is KURM. I don't know if you ever listened to the Colonel.
Oh, yeah.
I think what he meant is he should be.
Oh, good. That's great. I like
So
that.
far you're saying the mayor of Fayetteville? is
I don't know how Mayor Jordan feels about it.
supporting this?
I don't know. I'm
Okay, so it's just the mayors of all the others?
It was the Benton County mayors all got together.
And some of Springdale is in Benton County.
Right. That's why he was involved. Yeah. I think we will hear from those people who are for it before this is over. $400 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Well, tell us how we're going to hear. I just want to know, who is it that's supporting it? Because if their name comes up on the ballot in any way, I want to be sure I vote against.
Oh, good one.
And I already know that I can't vote for most of the Quorum Court, but I want to be sure that who I can vote for is not supporting it.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask the candidates.
Jane, do you know who your quorum court justice is right now?
Yes, I have her name written down, and it's been a while since I've corresponded with her, but and it's out of my head right now.
Do you know if she's Republican or Democrat?
Oh, I think she's Democrat,
Okay.
so she's probably on the other side.
Yeah.
Eva Madison, I also corresponded with her, but I know she's not.
Okay. So you're in what was Eva Madison's district?
No, well, at one time I think I was in her district,
Yeah, but
but that was when I lived somewhere else.
Oh, you live somewhere else. Oh, yeah.
But I'm not now. The woman. See, I have to think my city council member too.
Was it Evelyn Real Stafford?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think she is.
Okay.
She was usually voted against the majority. I know that. But we want to get more, if we could, get more people on the court that are on the other side of these issues.
Yes, that's right. Any more questions for Mac while we have his attention here?
When is the next information session?
We are meeting weekly. We're standing up weekly meetings at St. Paul's on the second floor on Wednesday evenings at 7.
At 7.
Yeah, it's also a hybrid meeting. So let me send you the
Okay.
Oh,
invite.
yeah,
Make
send
sure,
us the link. That would
Yeah.
be great.
yeah, we'll do. I'll make sure you're on the list.
You're gonna continue meeting weekly after the election. This is just.
This is really to be nasty. I'm looking forward to the 9th of November. Just exhale, I came to all this after I left, after I retired. I skated through years without ever thinking about these issues, and I think that's where most people are.
That's so true.
I've talked to so many people who, we're up on the square, usually that's not worth doing for a lot of issues because Fayetteville kind of thinks it in one way and the rest of the county thinks another. So many people don't know about this.
Yeah.
So talk it up with your friends, that's really important, I think, to let people
I lived here
know
for
it's
many-
coming. Go ahead.
I lived here for many years. I've been here for 22 years now in Arkansas. I lived here for probably at least 15 years before I understood that the Quorum Court is not a court.
Right.
They're a
Right.
legislative
I assumed
body.
it was a court with a judge and, they heard cases like any court, right? No, it's not a court at all. I wonder how many other people don't know that.
Lots of them.
Lots of people.
Lots of people
Why is
have
it
no
called that,
clue.
and what do we do to change the name?
Well, I think it's in the Constitution because it's the way they set up the structure of counties.
Really?
Yeah.
It is constitutional. And I've heard that everything the Quorum Court passes has to be codified. It has to be put into, and that not all of that's been done yet. That a lot of things they've done in the past 2 years, or I'll just say under Judge Wood, have not been codified.
Interesting.
And they're going, that's what I've heard from some sources.
Mhm.
And codified would mean put as an ordinance.
Put into the state, it's a state,
The code. state
Code.
not the Constitution, but the record the state has to keep of everything that's been done by quorum courts.
Hmm.
And he's
Because they're
not,
legislative.
he's not working with the state to do that.
That's what I've heard.
Hmm.
Now, I'll put that out there because maybe the rest of you might have more information, more reliable information. That came from attorney.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering, since this impacts me personally, if the Quorum Court eventually, votes against red dirt mining, say, does that mean that if someone wants to do that anyway, they can get away? They could get away with it?
I just don't know what that codification system is. I just understood that everything, and that makes sense. If you've done something legislatively, you have to record it.
Yeah.
So that it can be followed on down the years.
Well, Judge Wood did not really know what the point of an archivist was, so he trashed the archivist position.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and so maybe there's positions that things that he does not see the relevance of. He's just not taking care of.
Well,
And
he has an attorney. He has an attorney that's supposed to be done.
yes, but he's not a competent attorney. We've already determined that.
So, that's all in that situation, setup for
Just
the,
for the bribes.
because if somebody
Care about this other
who
stuff.
is the judge is elected who doesn't know, is an attorney, doesn't know anything. He's supposed to get an attorney that tells him what is legal and not legal and what he's supposed to do. And if he doesn't have an attorney that does that, then who knows what's happening, unless there's some people that are watching the system.
And now he's gonna run for Attorney General, is that his next?
I think he
he's already
lost the
done
primary.
Oh, he lost the
Yeah.
primary.
He
Yes.
was glad to hear that.
And so, so the only court, the only judge options would be either Patrick Deacon or Josh Moody. Right. So, so it will be different, but Josh Moody is quite competent. Patrick Deacon has not demonstrated a lot of competence. He'd probably follow very well in Judge Wood's footsteps.
I think so. He's articulate.
Not that.
You would just do what the developers told him.
Patrick Deacon. He speaks, but he doesn't necessarily, you could fact check him